Good morning. Oh, y'all are awake. I love it. I love it. I love it. As you have heard and just seen, we're starting a new series today, Unsung Heroes. Now, we all have heroes in our life. As a matter of fact, at the beginning of the service, Ben asked you who your hero was. And I heard who his favorite superhero was, and that wasn't good enough for me. So I would like to hear who your hero was. So on the count of three, I just want you to tell me who your hero was growing up. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I heard none of those. But I heard them. I just didn't understand any of them. We all have our heroes, and superheroes are easy to look up to. And I was thinking this week who my favorite superhero was, and honestly, I can't tell you because like Superman can fly. I can't do that. And he has those things with his eyes. Can't do that. And Batman's pretty cool. He doesn't necessarily have superpowers, but he has all these cool gadgets, and I don't have any of those things. And so we look up to superheroes, right? Because they have things and they do things that you and I cannot do. But when we look at actual people, not in the movies, but here on earth, there are heroic people that do big things. And if we look back at the beginning of our country, maybe a Lincoln or a Washington, or in sports, we look to people like LeBron or Luka, or maybe if you like football, and this is not going to come from Dallas, Mahomes, maybe, you like him, he's at least, Texas Tech. Or Ohtani in baseball, that dude can just do anything. Or musicians. Maybe you wish you could play like some of the ones on stage. Or maybe you wish you could write or something like Elton John or perform like Prince. I don't know. Or maybe an actor. Tom Hanks literally has done movies and he's the only one there besides a coconut. He's so good he doesn't need a supporting cast, right? Or Tom Cruise. Or I guess my mom failed me because my name's not Tom. And if I was named Tom Hanks, Tom Cruise, right, I could be a good actor, but I'm not. So if you're named Tom, maybe you missed your calling. Maybe you're supposed to be in theater or on the big screen. But we look at big people who do big things, even in the Bible, and we celebrate what they do. And people like that if you've been to church your whole life, or maybe this is the first time you've come, or first time you've come in a long time, you probably have heard of people like Moses. Moses was the one that led the Israelites out of captivity in Egypt, and he's the one that parted the Red Sea, right? The whole country of Israel, the whole people, they walked across the Red Sea on dry ground. So big things, big people. We think about David. David started just watching his dad's sheep and proved himself worthy, and because he went and he faced a giant that no one else would face named Goliath. And I literally talked to someone recently that they were like, I didn't even know that story was real. I thought it was made up. But that's real. We celebrate David because he became one of the greatest kings Israel has ever known. And we celebrate people like Paul. You and I are in church today because of Paul. Paul is the one that literally took the gospel and shared it with the rest of the world. So you and I know about Jesus. And so we celebrate people like that in the Bible. So they do things and they have done things that we haven't done. But have you ever had someone in your life, and I'm just going to be honest, my heroes are not super. They don't have superpowers or super abilities or super probably anything. And to look at them, they're very ordinary. And those are the heroes in my life. And I'm sure you are the same way. But people that work behind the scenes, that we don't know their name, it doesn't mean that they're not heroic, and it doesn't mean that they haven't made a big impact. It's just that they haven't been celebrated as much. I read a story just this week about C.D. Lamb. He's probably one of the, I wouldn't say the best, but one of the best receivers in the NFL currently. And he was asked about his health and fitness, like what does it take to keep him healthy and in shape and all those things. And he said he pays $50,000 every 2 weeks. Do the math. That's $1.3 million every year. Now, do you know what that $1.3 million represents? People. It represents doctors and trainers and nutritionists and chefs, people that you and I will probably never know their name, but they're making a significant impact in his life so he can make a significant impact in the job that he has chosen to do. I don't know if it's a job he plays football, but you understand what I'm saying, right? You understand. We'll never know their names, but they are making an incredible impact. And I think I can say this with a lot of confidence. Isn't that what you want to do? Don't you want to make a difference? Don't you want to make impact? In my whole life, I've never heard someone say this, man, I hope I leave this world worse than I found it. Right? Or you don't hear that. You hear people say, I want to leave this world better than I found it. I have 2 boys, and I want my boys' lives to be better because I am in them. I want to make a difference in their life. And in Shannon, my wife, I want to make a difference in her life. My friends and family, I want to make a positive difference. And I think you do too. But herein lies the problem. There's nothing super about me either. I don't have super knowledge, and I don't have super strength or any of those things that our superheroes have. So here's the question that I want us to tackle today. How do you make a difference when you're no superhero? How do you make a difference when you're just not super? And today we're going to look at someone who I believe probably fit this, she filled these shoes quite well, and her name's Lydia. Her story is short. As a matter of fact, her name is mentioned 2 times in the entire Bible. All we know about Lydia is in 4 verses. Now understand there's over 31,000 verses in the Bible. She's in 4. Her name's mentioned twice. We don't know all of her story, but by the end of today, I hope we understand the significance of her impact. So if you have your Bibles, we're going to be in Acts chapter 16 today. You can go ahead and turn there. I will put the verses we're going to look at on the screen. If you're new today and you don't have a Bible, I would absolutely love to give you one. So after the service, I'll be in the lobby. I have a couple of Bibles. I would just love to give you one if you want one and don't have one. But in order to get to Lydia's story, we need to go back and look at someone else's story who it is a big character. And I've already mentioned his name, and his name is Paul. Paul was a follower of Christ, but he didn't start out that way. He was a very educated man, and he actually had Christians tortured and put to death before he had an encounter with God that changed everything. And so Paul became probably the best, the most known about spokesperson of the gospel in Christianity history. This is who Paul is. So he used to put Christians to death. Now he's speaking on behalf of them. He knew Jesus. Like he walked with Jesus, and he heard Jesus say, hey, I'm going to die, and then I'm going to raise to life again. And then he saw it happen. And so it's Paul that has left Israel, and he's going across the world telling everyone else about the gospel. The gospel being Jesus is the Messiah. He is the risen Son of God. Like he predicted his death and his resurrection, and then he pulled it off, and I was there to see it. And so he's traveling, letting people know about this. So this is Paul's second missionary journey, and there's going to be a map on the screen so you can see it. And most of these places, if you recognize them on this map, it's because Paul probably started a church there. Like, this is a really, really big character. As a matter of fact, we know so much about Paul because he wrote about half of our New Testament, and his name is mentioned 228 times in the Bible instead of 2, like Lydia. But this is his second journey, and he has people with him. He has his traveling partner, Silas, and then they have a new convert who they're kind of mentoring. His name is Timothy. And then actually the author of what we're going to read today, he joins the journey. He wasn't there at the beginning, but he joins the journey. His name is Luke. And so they're headed further west and further north than anyone had ever traveled with the gospel. And so they're headed up, and they finally get up to Troas. There's this place called Troas where Paul has a vision. It's at night, and he sees a vision of a man from Macedonia, and this guy is pleading with Paul in his vision to come and share the gospel with the people of Macedonia. And so Paul and his entourage, his crew, they get in a boat, they go across the sea, and they find themselves in this place called Macedonia, and they go to a colony called Philippi. Now, you and I know this name if you've been in church very long at all, because there's a book in our Bible called Philippians, and it's a letter to the church at Philippi. And so this is where Paul went. Now, Paul went to this place, and found out very quickly that there weren't very many Jews there. Because this is a Roman colony, and Rome actually allowed Jewish folks to have worship. They would allow them to build synagogues. But the caveat was they had to have 10 Jewish men, because men were celebrated more in that culture in those days than women. So they had to have 10 Jewish men there in order to have a synagogue. Well, when Paul gets there is no synagogue. And so if there were Jewish people there, what they would normally do is they would go outside the city and they would find some type of water source, because there's a cleansing ritual that they would do before they would worship God. And this is where we pick up his story in Acts chapter 16 and in verse 13. They've been in Philippi a few days, and it says, on the Sabbath, Paul and his crew, went outside the city gate to the river, where we expected to find a place of prayer, and they did. And we sat down and began to speak to the women who were gathered there. Now we know, because there wasn't a synagogue, there weren't at least 10 Jewish men, but this passage doesn't even tell us there was one man. The church in Philippi was started with these women that Paul found at the water. And this is where our superhero Paul meets our unsung hero Lydia. So this is what it says. This is most of what we know about Lydia in this one verse. One of those listening was a woman from the city of Thyatira. That's important. And her name was Lydia. She was a dealer in purple cloth. She was a worshiper of God. Now, I want to share with you the history of Lydia and just understand that most of what I'm about to tell you is speculation. Now, it's not my speculation, it's historians and theologians, because this is pretty much all we know about Lydia, as what we've just read. But in those days, when they take the practices and all of the things and they add them all together, this is more than likely Lydia's history. Lydia, more than likely, the historians believe she was about 35 years old when she met Paul. Now, her name was Lydia, but she was from the city of Thyatira, which was known for making elaborate clothing for very important people. And so, just to keep it simple, because I'm a really simple guy, Lydia made fancy things for fancy folks, okay? That's what she did. But more than likely, Lydia started out as a slave. She lived her life under a master who was a merchant that made these elaborate clothing, all these fancy clothes for these important people. And she learned that trade. Now, she's no longer in Thyatira, so we know that she's no longer a slave. And the most logical way that she probably got out of slavery was her master bought her way out, which sounds weird until you hear the second part of this. The master could buy the slave's freedom, and in return, they could control the newfound free slaves' assets for the rest of their life. So it doesn't sound like freedom, but she's no longer in Thyatira. She's no longer under her master. Basically, what she did at the expense of her master is she went to Philippi and she started a branch of his business, and she ran it. So she must have been very good at what she did, and he saw the potential in her, and he chose her to free her to go start basically a franchise of his business in Philippi. And so we know that she grew up as a slave. We believe she grew up as a slave. She now has her freedom. And we know that she went to Philippi and she built a business, because it said in the passage that she traded the purple cloth. So we know she did the same thing that she used to do in Thyatira. And we know she had a home. We'll find that out in just a minute. So this is Lydia. This is what we know about her story. Now, the last phrase that we just read in verse 14 said that she was a worshiper of God. And then further in 14 it says this. She was a worshiper of God, and then the Lord opened her heart to respond to Paul's message. Now I just want to stop right here and just kind of explain what happened in Lydia's life here. See, Lydia knew about God. It said she was a worshiper of God. But the important thing to know is there's a difference between knowing something in our head and believing it in our heart. See, this is how it worked for Lydia. She knew about God. And it says that God opened her heart. God prompted her heart, and then she responded. She did something with the knowledge she had in her head. It became something deeper in her heart. She believed it, and she responded. And I want to explain it to you. I really want you to understand this. It's kind of sort of like me knowing that I should eat healthy. Some of y'all laughing. I am offended at this moment. No. I know in my head I should eat healthy, but do I really believe it if I don't respond and eat healthy? Now, I always say confession's good for the soul. I leave the house really early on Sundays, and I didn't pull a trailer today, so I had some extra time. So I stopped by the donut place across the street and got me a dozen chocolate-covered donut holes, and I ate them all. So here's the deal. I know I should eat healthy, but if I don't respond to it, do I really believe it? And it works the other way too. Here we go. I know I shouldn't speed. When I'm driving my vehicle, I should follow the law. We're supposed to do that. It's safer, it's better, all of those things. But do you know what I also know? That my truck has a governor set at 97 and I can make it go 98. See, I know I shouldn't speed, but do I really believe it if I don't respond to that knowledge? And Lydia knew God, but something changed in her life. God prompted her heart, and she responded to Paul's message. Now, before I get into the next verse, I'm going to give it away before we ever get there. I want you to understand that what you do, the decisions you make, affect those closest to you most. Whether they're good or bad. You can positively affect those around you by the decisions you make, and you can negatively affect those around you by the decisions you make. But the decisions you make affect those closest to you most. And let's check out verse 15. It says, when she and the members of her household were baptized. You see, something Lydia knew about God, but God prompted her heart. She responded and she got baptized. She began to follow Jesus for the first time. And when she made that decision, everyone in her household did also. Now, we don't know who's in her household because there's never a husband mentioned. There's never children mentioned. So it could have been that. It could have been servants. It could have been employees. We don't know. But what we do know is the decision she made affected them. And so it says the members of her household were baptized. And then it says she invited us to her home. Now, who's us? Peter and Silas and Timothy and Luke. Maybe there was more with them. We don't know, but that's the four we do know. So she invited these four strangers to her home. And she says, if you consider me a believer in God, come and stay at my house. And then it says she persuaded us. It wasn't like, hey, if you don't have a place to go, I got a house. That's not what she did. She persuaded them. She goes, no. You come and stay with me. I want to take care of you. I want to create a place that you can find warmth. You can find welcome. You can be fed. You can find all of these things at my house. I have a house, and I want you to come. And I have a gift of hospitality. We don't know that, but I'm just guessing. She has a gift of hospitality, and she's like, I want you to feel like you belong, and I want you to have a place where you can commune, where you can talk, and you can fellowship, and you can do all of these things. She offers up her heart first, and then she offers up her home to create this place. Now, what we know later on is that her home actually, more than likely, again, speculation, this because we don't know a ton about Lydia, became the first church in Europe. So Lydia was the first convert. She was the first one to say yes to Jesus in Europe. And then her house became the first church. Why did it become? Because she opened up her home. She was open to what God had for her life. God had prepared her for this, and she said yes. And she created this place. We know that this was a place of comfort and a place of safety because I'm not going to read it. I'm not even going to go through it. But I challenge you, go and read from verse 15 to verse 40. In that, there's some crazy social injustice. Paul and Silas get thrown in prison. And that was crazy enough as it is, the reason they got thrown in prison. But then what happened in prison was even crazier than that. So go home and read it. I challenge you. But this is what I know. In verse 40, when they get out of prison, do you know the first place they went? Lydia's house. It's the second time her name's mentioned. They go to her house. They had a place where they could meet. It was a place of safety. It was a place of friendship. It was It was a place where they could belong. And that's why I absolutely love the unsung heroes of our guest services team. I get to serve with them each and every week. And do you know what they do? They show up early and they pray together and they share what's going on in their lives, but then they create a place. They create a place where you can come and you can feel warm and you can feel welcome. They create a place where you can come and grow your faith, or maybe they create a place where you can come and find your faith, or rekindle your faith, or struggle with your faith. They create a place called Church at the Creek, and we couldn't do anything we do without them. And you know what? They don't have the spotlight. They don't have the stage. They probably aren't super. Now, some of them, pretty close. But they create a place for us. And I want to celebrate them. Would you just celebrate our guest services team today? Here's the deal. It's so important that Lydia opened up her home to become the first church in Europe. Do you know why that matters to us most? It should matter to us most. Because Christianity came to the United States through Europe. You see, it was Paul that proclaimed the gospel of Jesus to the people, but it was Lydia that gave him a place to do it. And we know a lot about Paul, but he couldn't have done what he did without the help of Lydia, those behind-the-scenes people who are unsung heroes. So how do you make a difference when you're not a superhero? Well, Lydia teaches us that you can make a difference by doing what you can with what you have. It's foolish to think you got to know everything before you can do something. You just do what you can with what you have. Now, when I grew up in church, I grew up a little bit different than probably some of you. Some of you are about to understand what I'm saying, but some don't, so I'm going to explain it. When we went to church like this, we would come an hour early, and we went to this thing called Sunday school. And basically, it was Bible school. Like we met with age appropriate, so like kindergarten met together, all the way up to singles and adults with kids, and all the way up to the retired folks. Like everybody had their spot, and they would meet together, and someone would share God's word, and we would study maybe a Bible story or whatever they were studying that week. It's called Sunday school. We learned about the Bible. And I grew up in church, and so I've been in church my whole life. So from the first week I was out of the hospital, I was in church. And my mom made sure of that. And I've asked her several times, really the first Sunday? She said yes. So, no lie. And if it is, it's her fault. But I had many Sunday school teachers over the years. And I'll be honest, I don't remember them all. But there's one. This is her picture. Her name is Frankie O'Neill. And Frankie wasn't super. I didn't call her Frankie O'Neill. She was actually our pastor's wife's sister. So our pastor's kids called her Aunt Frankie, so I knew her as Aunt Frankie. And she didn't have a great speaking ability. Matter of fact, she didn't have most of the abilities that most of us in this room we take for granted today. See, Aunt Frankie had a pretty severe case of cerebral palsy. And so she didn't get around. It was very difficult for her to even walk. And as a kid, I had a hard time sometimes understanding what she said. And I knew when she was having a rough day because it was even more difficult to understand her. But do you know what she did for me? Nothing super. She changed my life. She made a difference in my life. She's one of the reasons that I'm standing here today. Because Aunt Frankie showed up for me week after week and month after month, and she told me about Jesus, and she shared Bible stories with me. I know about Moses and David and Goliath because of Aunt Frankie. And she always made sure we had a snack, because heaven forbid us meet without eating something. She made a difference in my life. That's been over 40 years ago. And I still honor her because she did what she could with what she had. And friends, we have much more than she had. You want to make a difference? You do what you can with what you have. And she's one of the reasons that I absolutely love and I honor and I respect those that serve in our Next Gen ministry all the way from the nursery. Bless you if you do that. All the way up to our senior high. Bless you if you do that. Because these people, they make a difference. And just a few weeks ago, we asked some of them some questions. We did a survey and just said, hey, why do you serve? Why did you start serving? What do you like most about serving? And these are people that serve with your kids and grandkids. And I just want you to hear some of their answers. I love their answers. This first one actually displays what Lydia did almost to a T. It says, I always wanted to do more for God. When I heard that Creek Kids needed volunteers, I signed up. Had a head knowledge, had a knowledge I want to do more. God prompted her heart through an opportunity, and she responded and said yes. I love that. Parents, you don't think it matters what you do? Grandparents, you don't think it matters what you do? I wanted to follow in my parents' footsteps. And so now they're on their knees. They're sitting with kids with snotty noses, or there you go, right there. Perfect timing, thank you. They're sitting with kids, loving them, serving them. Why? Because mom and dad did. The decisions you make affect those closest to you most. I love this one. We literally teach this in our Discover track. We teach this very thing. They said, I feel more connected to my church when I serve. If you don't feel connected, that's one way you can get connected. Get in there and serve with other people. I love this one. I get to be one of the first people to show God's love to these kids. I love that. And just like Paul, this last person said, I get to share the gospel. My favorite part about serving in Next Gen ministry is I get to share the gospel. Here's the deal. You may never know their name. But who's to say in 40 years someone's not standing in front of a crowd or having a one-on-one conversation? You say, there's just one person. They made a difference in my life. What did they do? Oh, they sat on the floor and played with me. Played toy, taught me about Jesus. Brought snacks. Brought their coffee in the room. They weren't supposed to have their coffee in the room. You know who you are. And here's the deal. You serve in our Next Gen, you're going to make a difference in someone's life. I'd like to celebrate them too. Would you celebrate our Next Gen volunteers, please? I got to hurry. Y'all aren't listening fast enough. So what, Isaac? So what? How does this even work on Monday? See, today's Sunday, and I do Sunday things on Sunday, but Monday's a totally different world, right? I go to work, I do all these things. How does what we've talked about today affect me on Monday? I've got two things I want to challenge you with. The first one is this: be open to God's prompting. Just be open to it. Lydia was a worshiper of God. She was at church. But God prompted her heart, and she responded to it. Be open to His prompting. And this is what... Some of you, as sure as I'm standing here, some of you already know what God would like for you to do. You've just not responded. Others of you may not know. And so I want to give you one thing to do. Whether you follow Jesus or you don't, maybe you're just here with a friend checking things out. Ask Him. Just ask Him, what is God prompting you to do? God, what do you want me to do? It's one of those prayers that most of the time He answers me. Not all the time, most of the time. God, what do you want me to do? And then just sit there, and the first thing that comes to your mind normally is what He wants you to do. Now, some of you here aren't ready for that. So here's something that all of us can do, whether we follow Jesus or not. What is one decision you can make this week that will benefit those around you? One decision. Maybe you need to make a decision to quit eating donuts. You're like, how does that help and affect those around me? Well, it makes you nicer. When you're more healthy, you can get out and play ball with your kids or your grandkids. When you're healthier, you're a better person. So maybe you just need to make that kind of decision. Maybe you need to change jobs. You're like, Isaac, that's a big swing. I know. Maybe your job is not healthy for you and your family. Maybe you just need to switch up some priorities. I was visiting with a new friend of mine. He's great. I call him a kid. He's a grown man, but he's young with young kids, and he was talking about he works 6-7 days a week sometimes. He's trying to do his best. He wants to be there for his kids. He wants to provide. It's a tightrope that a lot of us walk. We understand that. And I saw something on social media, and I sent it to him. It said this. It said, in 20 years, the only people that will remember that you worked late will be your kids. He just responded, ouch. That one hurt. Maybe you just need to switch up your priorities. What's one thing that you can choose to do this week that would benefit those around you? And then the second thing is this: use what you have. You don't need more knowledge in order to do something. You don't need more of anything. Just use what you have. What do you have that God could use to benefit others? Do you have a home? Like Lydia, she opened up her home. Maybe your home needs to be, well, along with your kids in the neighborhood, they just need a safe place to play. Maybe that needs to be your home. Do you know that last Monday, I drove an hour to get to my small group? Do you know why I drive an hour to get to my small group? Because my small group leaders, Pete and Jamie, opened up their home, and they made it a place for me, a place where I can share. I can share things that I normally wouldn't share in front of other people, a place where I can study God's Word. We can hold each other accountable. They open up their home. Do you have a home? Do you have resources? We talked about camp this summer for our students. Do you know that some of our students will not get to go to camp unless somebody with resources helps make that happen? What do you have that could benefit others? Because, friends, you don't need superpowers to make a difference. And you don't need a stage, and you don't need a platform. You need none of those things. Doing what you can with what you have will and can change lives. Would you pray with me? God, I'm grateful for Lydia. I've had so many Lydias in my life that people will never know their names, but they have impacted me greatly. They have made me who I am today. And God, I believe that this is a room full of people that want to make a difference. And so, God, I pray that you would challenge our hearts. God, would you prompt our hearts like you did Lydia's? But God, would you also give us the courage to respond? Now, there's people here that don't know you. They don't have a relationship with you, and you're prompting their hearts to begin a relationship. God, would you give them the courage to come down front here in a minute? We've got some folks that would help them. God, give them the courage to respond. God, there's changes that all of us can make in our lives so we can make a difference in other people's lives. God, prompt our hearts and then give us the courage to respond. Help us make a difference. It's in Jesus' name I pray.